Well, for those of you working with the hybrid course, this is your first video. I will have discussed it with you in class number 1, which is our orientation class, and you will get one for each of the classes remaining for the not very many weeks we're going to be together. I think we have a total of about 10 classes face-to-face, maybe only 9. But I want you to have this so I can kind of give you a jump start on each of the units. There are several things that I want you to be working on. We're a wonderful size group. I believe we have 6, and that'll be fun because we'll be able to reduce the numbers and be able to have a little more time for discussion. By now you've seen my notebook. I encourage you to build one of your own. All the stuff you can get is open, and it's designed for you copying it if you want to. If you have trouble with a copier and you want a copy of anything, all you have to do is let me know in class. So let's talk about, I'm making the assumption that you have ended class 1. In class 1, I've dealt with a few things I'll mention again and a few things I haven't mentioned. We're keeping the assignments largely pretty focused on tools and techniques that you personally will be able to use. And there's a reason for that. What I have discovered over the last probably 15 years is that not a lot of attention is given in graduate school to become policy developers, policy analysts. And yet I've discovered more and more that there's a great demand for that to occur. And part of the reason that the demand is as high as it is the issue of change. In all my nearly 50 years of teaching, I don't think I've ever experienced a time when there was such an omnidirectional nature of change. We're seeing it in the economy. We're seeing it in a variety of social institutions. The government is operating beyond any logical description any of us could give to it, all brought about by the fact that the world is getting smaller. Or, as Tom Friedman said, the world is flat. So you'll be introduced to Tom if you don't know his work. He's a senior analyst and editor for the New York Times. You'll be introduced to Peter Drucker. Now, Peter's not with us anymore, but the work that he did a decade ago is as accurate as it was the day he wrote it. In fact, it's probably a little bit more accurate because times have caught up with him. And another gentleman at MIT whom I have a great deal of faith in. I've worked with his material for a good long time. That's Peter Senge. Our beginning will be this idea of how do you become a change manager? How do you take charge of it? And how do you develop policy to support change management? Then we'll go into the elements of working with policy itself. One of the things I am assuming, and it may not be a safe assumption, but I'm making it anyway, is that you have worked somewhere or are currently working in an environment where you can be what we call in qualitative research a participant observer of policy design, implementation, assessment, because that's what policy analysts do. And if you are in any kind of leadership position, I don't care whether it's first level all the way to a university president, one of the things you will be working with the most is this whole idea of following policy. And the bottom line is we have many masters. Here at Morgan, we have we all go up the chain of command to the president, but then you have 2 other groups you have to worry about or work with. One, of course, is the board of, I forget what they're called, the regents, I think. It's not the board of regents that the University of Maryland that all work with. It's the one that is specifically designated for Morgan. We also have something we lovingly call MHEC, Maryland Higher Ed Commission. They've just gotten a new deputy director who has close ties to Morgan. Hopefully the result of that will be the board will become far more functional. It's been kind of a rubber stamp for the last decade. Needs to be fixed, but that'll have to be until when this governor goes out of office. Okay, what I would like you to do before you come to class 2 is look at what it says. There are Peter Drucker, the first thing there is one of Peter Drucker's readings. I encourage you to read it. We'll be discussing it. It's helpful if you at least have some sense of where Peter's headed. And the very last set of PowerPoint slides, They're kind of long at 27 slides. Not that I wanted them to be long, but it's the best complete, if you will, gestalt of the whole concept of policy, as I said, design, development, implementation, and assessment. So I suggest you look at those so that we can begin to talk about them. Now, the other thing that I've handed out to you, you have it. It contains a design that I got from a friend who teaches at Florida Atlantic University. Her goal was to set up a design that you could use to, in effect, follow through all of the elements in those 4 elements that I mentioned. I should call them all the sub-elements, I'm sorry. What we have is several assignments in which you are going, as a spin-off of that participant observer business, you are going to be analyzing, I like analysis better than say evaluate, analyzing the nature of policy, where you work, or in case you're a full-time student, where you have worked. Now, I am notorious at Morgan for liking group work. There's a reason I like group work. Mainly it is because virtually every project that I've been involved with for the last quarter of a century is pretty much done as a team effort. So if you are working with someone, or at least have a common interest with someone in the class, I would strongly encourage you to go ahead and find a policy you're comfortable with. I had in this class, when I taught it last year, I had some folks work together. There were 3 of them from Compton. They did a great job. I was very excited about what they did. One of the things you also can do, I've tried to persuade a couple more of our Morgan colleagues, some fairly high in the program, but don't have their doctorates completed. Please get in this course, because what it will do is give you the opportunity to get the credential you need, but it will also give you the opportunity to gather some useful tools, if you will, that you can use working in your very area of interest. Those people are not in the class, but if you know them, work with or for them, we have absolutely no problem involving them in the course, because the more practicality there is, I must explain where that comes from. Some of you have already heard this. Most of the people that I studied with had roots deeply embedded in something called action research. Largely, it was the modus operandi at University of Chicago. And this was when the University of Chicago had all of the heavy hitters. Robert Maynard Hutchins was the president. My dissertation advisor was the department head. And they had a number of people, very high level, who've done a lot of the research that contemporary research is based on. But they say that research has to be practical. It has to be applicable. Theoretical research has a place, no question. I've seen it in operation in some of my postdocs at places like Villanova and Columbia, both fine schools. But I've always left those postdocs saying, well, gee, this was interesting, but I'm just not sure how I'm going to be able to use it. Here at Morgan, I've been able to use virtually all the work that I've done with students as we've gone into ways of improving this program and in the consulting work I continue to do with both 2- and 4-year colleges in the state of Maryland. So I find this very helpful. One of the things that I prefer, and I'm going to wrap it up on this note, one of the things that I prefer is that you keep your writing trenchant. Now, what do I mean? It's much, much easier to write a very long, kind of run-on assignment paper. I don't like that. I had a president once that told me that anytime someone sent him a memorandum or a position paper, said they better be done in 3 to 5 pages or he quit reading. And that was an enlightening aha experience for me, because I tend to be rather verbose, as at least half of the class already knows. And the idea simply was I wanted to say more, and there are other ways to do that. So my point would be your first written assignment should not run more than 2 pages. One of our colleagues is currently in Spain, and she's turned in 2 of them. She doesn't like to fall behind, somewhat obsessive compulsive like me. And she's kept them all to about 1.5 pages. That's great. when you do your first one, I encourage you to do the same thing. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your being with me. I'll end as I always do. It's a pleasure to work with and learn from you. Thank you.